That's not the anxiety-free life that we want. A life where I resign myself to facing one problem after another. That is not my idea of the most desirable anxiety-free life. What is my idea of the most desirable anxiety-free life? It's a life without problems. A life where I don't have to face anything. That's the life that I want. That's the freedom from anxiety that I want. I don't want freedom from anxiety that means dealing with one problem after another until I die. It may be right. It may be correct. It doesn't mean that's the one that I want. And so you think, well...
The YouTube is telling us they can't understand anything you're saying, so we're trying to fix it.
Okay, well...
A lot of stress.
Anxiety.
Anyway, yeah, anxiety. Okay. So this is not the life that we want. Right? What we want is a problem-free life. And what we see is that it seems like, perhaps, other people are having this life. We look on social media, and these people, whether or not they're living the dream, they want us to think that they're living the dream. In this way, they will sell us more whatever. We'll give them more upvotes or something. And of course, they're not living the dream. No one is living the dream. We try and convince other people that we're living the dream, and we fall for it. I think even though we see again and again that these people who seem to be on top of the world are at least occasionally getting crushed. I mean, we see this at the supermarket and the tabloids, one after another. Here they go, like ducks in a row, falling down. The latest one was, what's his name? The Friends guy, Matthew Perry. He had the TV show, famous TV show back in the 90s, which I never saw a single episode of. I was living in the monastery in Hollywood. But nevertheless, I know who he is because the TV show was one of the most famous TV shows at the time. Friends, it was called, right? And so he died recently. He had a miserable life, drug overdose, and he just couldn't stop drugging himself because he was in such mental pain, such anguish. Now, how did he get to be so famous in the first place? This is the interesting thing. He fell for this idea of living the dream. He fell for it. I read about his life after he died. Before he got the gig on Friends, he read something in the newspaper about another famous actor, Charlie Sheen, who again was a train wreck. Another guy whose life is spun completely out of control. He's getting into trouble and he's in and out of rehab and all these problems he's having. And so Matthew Perry, the future Friends star, reads about this. And he reads what the trouble that Charlie Sheen's going through. He says, yeah, but what does he care? He's famous. He fell for it. If you are famous, you don't have any problems. This is what was in his mind. If I could just be famous, everything would be okay. He's famous. These things that are in the newspaper, they won't touch him because he's famous. Now, we all have our thing. It may not be fame, wealth, beauty, strength, whatever it is, intelligence, whatever it is we idolize. For him, it was famous. And at that moment, he got down on his knees for the first time in his life and prayed. He read this story, got down on his knees and prayed for the very first time. And he said, oh God, please make me famous. You can do whatever else you want to do with me, just make me famous. 3 weeks later, he got the spot on Friends. And he was one of the most famous people on the planet. And he learned a tremendous lesson, which is that is not the answer. However good it looks, and if you're here tonight looking for spiritual growth, it's safe to say that you are not going to be duped so easily as he was for something like this. Nevertheless, these things still turn our heads occasionally. We see someone who seems like they've got a good deal, and we kind of look at them twice and think, that looks like he's having a good life. He's living the dream. But as Swami Vivekananda tells us, nobody is living the dream. Swami Vivekananda says, nobody is really happy here. Straight out, nobody is really happy here. Where is it? Here he goes. This thing is just right in the way.
Yeah,
It's
just take-
all right. It's
No,
okay.
let's get it. It's useless now. So that way.
Oh.
It's just
All
causing
right.
stress.
Okay, last call. This is it. Okay, Swami Vivekananda says, nobody is ever really happy here. If a man is wealthy and has plenty to eat, his digestion is out of order. If a man's digestion is good, he has nothing to put into his mouth. If he's rich, he has no children. If he's hungry and poor, he has a whole regiment of children and doesn't know what to do with them. Why is it so? Because happiness and misery are the obverse and reverse of the same coin. He who takes happiness must take misery also. We all have this foolish idea that we can have happiness without misery. Now notice what he says here. He doesn't say spiritual aspirants don't have this idea. He says we all have this foolish idea that we can have happiness. He doesn't say illumined souls don't have this idea. We all have this idea that we can have happiness without misery. And you look at it, you see even in the lives of the great sages, when some negative situation comes up, what do? They don't just, occasionally, Sri Ramakrishna especially is in samadhi so much of the time, that if he's not aware that there's a problem because he's in ecstasy, that happens. Nevertheless, when they come down to this ordinary plane where the rest of us live, then yes, they try and change the unhappy situation into a happy one. That's what we do here. And like Matthew Perry, maybe we don't fall for something huge like that, but we have to convince ourselves somehow that there is nothing out there. There is no fame, there is no money, there is no significant other. A lot of people put romance in this category. If I could just find Mr. Right or Mrs. Right or non-binary right, however that goes, I'm getting too old. I can't. But anyway, whatever that is, if I could just find the right person, then I wouldn't have any problems. Sri Ramakrishna illustrates this with a parable about a bird on a ship. He says, a bird sat absent-mindedly on the mast of a ship anchored in the Ganges. Slowly the ship sailed out into the ocean. When the bird came to its senses, it could find no shore in any direction. It flew toward the north, hoping to reach land, and went very far and grew very tired, but could find no shore. What could it do? It returned to the ship and sat on the mast. After a long while, the bird flew away again, this time toward the east. Couldn't find land in that direction either. Everywhere it saw nothing but limitless ocean. Very tired, it again returned to the ship and sat on the mast. After resting a long while, the bird went toward the south and then toward the west. When it found no sign of land in any direction, it came back and settled down on the mast. It did not leave the mast again, but sat there without making any further effort. It no longer felt restless or worried. Because it was free from worry, it made no further effort. So I think it's pretty obvious. This is a metaphor for looking for peace, freedom from anxiety, fulfillment, whatever you want to call it, outside of ourselves. You look for fame, you look for money, you look for all these things outside of ourselves. Each one exhausts you. Look what it did to Matthew Perry, right? Each one of these things spends us, and we come back to ourselves haggard. And then maybe we go look for something else until we are convinced that there is nothing out there that is going to do it for us. And then we return to the mast of the ship. What is the mast of the ship? That is our center. That is returning to ourselves. That is looking within instead of without. And then what do we find when we do that? We finally decide that we're going to stop looking around this world for fulfillment and we're going to start looking within. We start reflecting and thinking about ourselves, our spiritual condition, our character developments, all these things. What do we find? We find that we're a mess. Where is this piece on the mast? There's no piece on this mast. This mast is a mess. We didn't even, when we think, gosh, maybe I was a better person when I was out looking for land out there. I fly back to the center of this mass and I look at myself for the first time through the practice of yoga. And I start seeing myself a little bit objectively. And I realize I've got a lot of work to do here. So where's the peace on the mast of the ship? You know, I had a friend come and visit the high desert retreats that I've known for a long time from college. And he's come to visit me, I think, in every monastery I've stayed in. In fact, when I met him in college, I was living in a monastery, and that's where we started, and we're still doing it. He's married, and he's a multimillionaire Silicon Valley success story. But anyway, he's always had this issue with fear. As long as I've known him, he's told me about this fear. And now back in college, he was afraid of fighting. Physical altercation, he was afraid of this. And you know, he doesn't seem the type. He's 6'1" and 200 pounds. He's not an easy mark. Not somebody that you think, oh yeah, this guy's, you know, let's pick him. It's not like that. It's some psychological thing he has. And so he told me about this, and I don't think I ever even really would have noticed that he had this problem if he didn't keep telling me about it over the years, but he does. And so when he was about 40, I think he's about 40. I was in the monastery in Trabuco, and he came to the monastery to visit me there, and he's been boxing. He's taken up boxing. At the age of 40, he's pretty old to start boxing. And he's jumping around the kitchen of the monastery doing this shadow boxing thing. And it seemed a little bit, I mean, I think it helped him some. It seemed a little bit frantic to me at the time, but I think it probably helped, and I think it's good. He saw this character defect. He wants to work on it. He wants to do something about it. He's going to try and go box. But however that goes, he came, now we're both about 55. And so he came to the desert, and he still, again, he tells me about this fear thing. Now it's kind of a general bodily fear. I mean, at 55, you don't get into it. If you get into a fight at 55, you're going to lose. So generally, you don't do that. So it's not really about fighting so much. It's just about bodily fear. And so he has, it seems to me, this is the Vedantic teaching, he has been harping on this character defect for 30 years-ish plus. That hasn't made it better. This came up in one of the lives of Holy Mother's relations. She had a niece. Her thing wasn't fear of fighting or something. It was purity. She was squeamish. She, you know, don't touch me kind of thing. And that's dirty and that's filthy. And I have to take a bath because I got polluted. This is her thing. She's got a kind of craze for purity. And Holy Mother finally got fed up with it. And she said, this mania for cleanliness is an obsession. As a result, the mind never feels pure. The more you emphasize your obsession, the more obsessed you become. It is true of all things. This is what she says. The more you emphasize your obsession, the more obsessed you become. It is true of all things. This is what I saw in my friend with fear. This is what she said to her niece with this squeamish need for purity that she had. So we come back to the mast of the ship. We're going to do a personal inventory, as they say in AA. We take a personal inventory and we look at our strengths and weaknesses. We don't want to harp. We don't want to obsess over our shortcomings. We don't need to repeat over and over again, you're always forgetting things. You know, we have this internal commentator in our heads that tells us about our lives and the people in our lives and why we do the things we do and what's wrong with us. It can become toxic. This thing can actually be mean to us. We have this inner voice that beats on us. And we think maybe it's good for us. Tough love. Yeah, I'm always forgetting. I have to stop doing this thing, whatever it is. I never finish what I start, or I'm always late, or whatever it is that we're, bothered about. Vedanta says, don't emphasize this. Don't harp on your faults. It doesn't make them better. Instead, what we do is we encourage our strengths. We think about our strengths. I'm going to beat this. not only in ourselves, but in others as well. We don't harp on other people's faults. When we see other people's faults, we're more apt to see our own. We're more apt to emphasize these things. We want to emphasize strength everywhere. That's what we want to do. Strength everywhere. Think about strength. Weakness, okay, something happened. Now let's move on. Now I'm going to be strong. That's what we do. This is how we overcome these things. We don't go, nuts over our fear. We say, I am strong. We repeat that mantra, I am strong. I'm a child of God. However we do that, there's divinity within me, however we want to approach that problem. That's how we defeat fear, or I am pure, right? The niece she had this thing with impurity. Repeat all the time, I am pure. There's divinity within me. It is pure. This is the way Vedanta teaches us to overcome. Once we've gone all around the world, we've killed ourselves through how many lifetimes, like Matthew Perry, looking for this or that or the other thing and not finding it. Finally, we come back after all this suffering and struggle to ourselves. And then we find another set of challenges. We don't harp on the weaknesses. We accentuate the strengths in ourselves and in others. That's the method. And so it's important, I think, also for us to understand just how much better we are when we can free ourselves from anxiety, when we can emphasize our strengths, when we can actually listen to the benevolent voice in our heads, when we can be nice to ourselves and nice to others. When we are at peace, when we are calm, this is a position of strength, self-possession, and poise. We're actually capable of wisdom in that state. When we are full of anxiety, we're nervous, we're afraid, we're panicked, we're not thinking straight, we are weakened by it. So the reason I say this is that we can never allow ourselves, we can never legitimize our anxiety. No matter how bad the situation is, no matter what we are facing, we can never say, well, it's so bad right now, I'm just going to worry until such and such. The reason I'm saying this is that I had another person come and visit me in the desert within the last month or so. I love her. She's a beautiful person. She and her husband have been coming for several years. About a year ago, she had some stomach aches. And she went to the doctor, and the doctor said it was nothing. And she didn't believe him. And she went back to the doctor again. And she basically pushed her stomach aches on the doctors until they did something. They looked at her, and they found that she's got stage 4 ovarian cancer. So she went from a healthy person with a stomach ache to stage 4 ovarian cancer in one day, literally. And so naturally, of course, she's had over the last year all kinds of anxiety, all kinds of pain, and all that is completely understandable and natural and normal. You're not going to avoid it in a situation like that. So she came, like I said, within the last month, and we were talking about these things, anxiety and how to try and be at peace in this situation, which admittedly seems real challenge. And she said she was waiting for the results. She couldn't be at peace right now because she had a particular result. She was waiting for a blood test. She wasn't responding too well to the chemo or something. Some cancer markers had gone up. And so she's waiting for the results of a particular blood test. And then when these results come in, then she can be at peace. But right now she's going to worry until she gets these results. It was like a week away or something. No, we can't do that. I understand. It doesn't get much worse than a fatal cancer diagnosis when you're healthy, and then the next day, it's all different. Your whole life is upside down. Nevertheless, let's think about it. We've got a fatal cancer diagnosis. We've been on chemo. We've got a new blood test coming up. We're anxious about the results. In a few days, those results are going to come in. I think we all know that worrying about those results is not going to make them any better. I think we all know that. Now, when those results come in, whatever they say, what state of mind do we want to be in? Surrender, you want to be in a state of peace. You do not want to be in a state of anxiety when the mail comes or the doctor calls or however that manifests. You want to handle that situation from a position of strength and poise, of wisdom and power. That's where you want to be when this news comes in, good or bad. Agreeing to legitimizing our anxiety, agreeing to stay in a state of anxiety until a particular result manifests. No good. We can't do that. So we have to remember that peace is power, and we don't ever want to put it off till later. Banish anxiety from our minds as quickly as we can. And you say, well, how do you do that? You got a fatal cancer diagnosis. How are you going to banish anxiety from your mind when you have a fatal cancer diagnosis? Well, I never had one. Okay, I've never had that. And so I can't really say, oh, like this, that, or the other thing. But there are techniques. First of all, I'm going to go back to Mother, Holy Mother, her teaching in the beginning that I read. She says, don't be afraid. Human birth is full of suffering, and one has to endure everything patiently, taking the name of God. That is wonderful advice. Remember this. Human birth is full of suffering. I am suffering. I'm not suffering. I don't have this cancer diagnosis because I'm a bad person. I don't have this cancer diagnosis for any particular reason. This is human existence. Human existence is full of suffering. Be patient. Take the name of God. Take the name of the Lord. As he sang earlier, the name of Hari, whatever name works. This works. It works short term, it works long term. Just if a few minutes of breathing slowly and repeating a mantra or a prayer or whatever it is that we do will make and has an immediate effect. Admittedly, it does not last. And you have to do it again. But it will have an effect. Long term, if we do this, if we spend time, half an hour, morning and evening, every single day, breathing and repeating the Lord's name, or some prayer, whatever it is you do, meditation, focus, prayer, whatever your practice is, we find that if you've never done this before and you do this every day for half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, I promise you, everything in your life will change in a year. It'll completely change your mind and your body and your life. If you can really stick to that. And you find that you are just not as anxious about anything as you were before. There is a long-term benefit to this practice. You have to try for yourself to see it. And I think probably most of you have already done this, and that's why you're here, but it's worth saying. So that's the first thing. Very simple. Holy Mother's teaching. Remember that life is full of suffering. My suffering is not because I'm a bad person. It's because I'm a human being. This is what happens to human beings here. We suffer. It doesn't mean anything about me in particular. It doesn't reflect on some shortcoming I have. I'm just a human being and I'm suffering. That's one thing. Another practice that can help us to reduce our anxiety and worry. If we step back and we analyze, every time we're worried, what is the cause of that worry? If we look, we will find that there is some attachment. There is something that we are holding on to that is making us unhappy. If you look at the gun owners, clearly it was the guns. If you look at my friend, clearly it was the self-image. Or anything that you obsess over. I'm so this or I'm so that. You're attached to a self-image, an idea of yourself. With my friend who had the cancer diagnosis, clearly she's attached to life. She's attached to her family. Her life, she likes her life. She's a beautiful and intelligent, wonderful person. And of course she likes her life. Why wouldn't she? And she's got grandchildren. So she wants to see her grandchildren. All these attachments are there. And if we look, every time we worry, we will find some attachments. You have to think about it. There's so many different possible things we can be attached to here. It's senseless to list them, although I will actually list a few, because there's a famous Indian king, Bhartrihari, 1st century AD, who gave up everything. gave up all attachment to everything because he wanted to be fearless. And so he has this list of what you get attached to and what worry it causes. He says, in pleasure, there is the fear of disease. You can see that, like if you love tennis, well, if you mess up your knee, no more tennis. So in this kind of, you depend on something, then that's taken away. It's an attachment, and you worry about your health. In social position, there's the fear of falling off. In wealth, there's the fear of thieves. In honor, there's the fear of humiliation. In power, there's the fear of enemies. In beauty, the fear of old age. On and on and on he goes with all these things. And what does he do? He gives them all up, leaves his kingdom, and goes and lives in a cave and becomes a great saint. So, okay, you're probably not going to do that. Well, yeah, why not? I made it, yeah, give it a try. I mean, probably go to the cave, you worry about where you can get your food, right? But anyway, so the question is, how do we implement this? If we are not Vajrayari, and we are not going to go off into a cave and give up everything in the name of fearlessness, then how are we going to use this teaching to our advantage? Well, one thing, I mean, of course, many people, of course, they don't do this. What they do is they just grab everything they can and keep trying to hold on to everything until they die. But they don't live without anxiety. That's what most people do, but they don't live without anxiety. For those of us who have anxiety, identify it as a problem and want to get rid of it, and yet want to hold on to whatever it is in our life, what do we do? That's the question. Sri Ramakrishna says, renounce mentally. Renounce mentally. So we identify, we have some particular anxiety about something, and then we mentally let it go. We can say, Lord, I'm afraid for my life, I'm afraid for my health, I'm afraid for my family, my son, whatever it is, my money, my job. You know how important this is to me. Give me some detachments. Give me some detachment from this. Help me to let it go. Help me to understand that you are my support. You are my real joy. I love cheesecake. Lord, be my cheesecake. That joy that I'm getting out of cheesecake, you be that for me. I'm tired of being attached to whatever it is. You be that in my life. This thing that I love so much. Let me see you and my wife and my job, whatever. That's the method of devotion. That's the method of the bhakta. Trying to mentally let go through prayer and love. Asking God to substitute God for whatever it is that we're attached to that is making us unhappy. What's the method of the jnani? Recognize that this is all fleeting. This is all going. If you recover from your cancer diagnosis, something else is going to get you. Your family is going to leave you, your job is going to leave you, your car, your dog, all of it. It's just a question of when. That's the jnani method. Realize this whole world is changed. This body is changing. Life is changing. It is all changing. It is all going. There is nothing I can hold on to here. And so in that situation, say we have cancer or some other serious challenge to our lives. When I recognize that everything is fleeting, that everything is leaving, that I can't really hold on to anything here, that I can't really call anyone my own here, as much as I love them and care for them. What is most important in this terrible situation? Say cancer, whatever it is. What is the most important thing? The most important thing is that I can act in a way that I am comfortable with, that I am at peace with, a position where I can be a source of strength I can be an example to others. These people that I love, that I'm afraid of losing, if I act with attachment and panic, what does that do to them? If I act with peace and strength, what does that do to them? Clearly, they're going to benefit more from the seconds. If I can act with poise and dignity and be a source of inspiration and maybe even joy to the people around me, clearly that is what I want to do if I really love them. So that is the method of the Jnani. What is most important in this situation? Acting in a way where I can be a source of strength and hope to others, and manifest my own divinity to myself and to those around me, to be the best version of myself that I can be in this challenging situation. That's what's most important. All this other stuff is fleeting. And so it's interesting to note here also that this kind of gives Bhartrihari's little teaching here of all these things and their worries. It gives a kind of logical reason why nobody's living the dream. You can't really live the dream here. You can't have it all. Because if you have it all, you're afraid of losing at least some of it. And so no one is really living a life free of anxiety here. You can see that logically from Bhartrihari, but also it's interesting that back to the beginning when I quoted the Imitation of Christ, and Thomas à Kempis, I don't know if you know the book, but basically it's in the form of the devotee speaks to the Lord and the Lord speaks back to the devotee. Most of the book is in that form. And so Thomas à Kempis says to the Lord, whatever plans I make for my peace, I recognize that my life cannot be without strife and trouble. This is what he says in prayer to the Lord. And the Lord responds. The Lord responds and says, that is so, my son. Why? Now this is the answer for the devotee, right? We saw the logical answer from Bhartrihari. Why we can't live without anxiety in this world, because we have stuff and we like it and we're attached to it. That's what he pointed out to us. And now we're going to have God tell us why we can't live the dream, why we can't have it all and be free from anxiety. He says, I would not have you seek a peace that lacks temptations or experiences no adversity. Rather, I would have you think that you had found peace even when you are exercised by various tribulations and tried by many adversities. That is God's answer to this question. I will not give you that. I will not let you live the dream here. That is not going to happen. Rather, instead of that, what I want you to do is in the midst of all this turmoil, find peace. And what does he say? He says, rather, I would have you think that you had found peace even when you are exercised by various tribulations and tried by many adversities. Exercised. What does that mean, exercise? It means we are getting stronger. That's what this is about. That's why we're getting these tribulations and temptations and adversities. We are in the gym. What Swami Vivekananda calls this world a moral gymnasium. We're lifting weights and becoming stronger in this way. We're being exercised. And you think, I don't feel like I'm being exercised. I feel like I'm being oppressed. There's a reason for that. It's because we have an idea, we need to shift our perspective. We have an idea that we're supposed to live a certain kind of life here. And when I'm not living the kind of life that I think I should be living, I feel oppressed. But if we shift our perspective, and instead of looking on life as a particular life, the life of a career and a family and whatever it is that we want, whatever our ideal life is, there's so many different ones. If we stop looking upon that as the goal, as long as we look upon that as the goal, yes, we're going to feel oppressed because we're going to find all these obstacles in the way of our goal. On the other hand, if instead we look at life as a means to an end, life is not an end in itself. Life is a means to an end. So there is no particular kind of life that I need. What I need to have is life experience to help me grow into something else. To help me what? To help me manifest this divinity that is within. Life is a means to that. Maybe I need to have a job and a family and a loving life situation. Or maybe I need adversity and torment to manifest this divinity within. That is very idiosyncratic. We all have different ways that we are going to interact with this world constructively. And so life is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. The more we can remember that, the more we are going to be able to find peace in adversity, in trial, in temptation and tribulation. I'm fond of telling this little tidbit from Swami Swahananda. Probably most of you know that name. Swami Swahananda was in charge of the Vedanta Society from 1976 until 2012. So most of you probably have heard that name. Guru of many, many aspirants. He had a rock outside his room. On this rock was carved a message. And the message carved in the rock was that the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Isn't that beautiful? The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Now, the more that we can keep the main thing, the more we are going to be able to find peace and strength, wisdom, poise, in spite of inevitable adversity, strife, trouble, pain, suffering. May we all have that. May the good Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. May good betide all. May happiness come to all. May all see the face of truth and be fortified with the armor of love, goodwill, joy, and understanding. All peace, peace, peace. So thank you all very much for coming. I guess we eat now or we talk more? We have Q&A.
Well, everybody can give a flower. There's flowers to do on the altar if you want to. No. We want to thank everybody online too. I know it was kind of a struggle today.
Sorry about that.
No, it's our fault, trust me.
Well,
Actually, it turned out that things worked out well. So thank you all for coming. Thanks, Swamiji. Let's give him a nice round of applause because it's really wonderful. We so are happy. Next month, might as well tell it now. We have not only Swami Atmarupanandaji coming on the first Wednesday. We have Krishna Pranaji is coming from
Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara.
Wow.
It's probably going to be the third weekend. So we'll have kind of a weekend retreat with Ma. So that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, how about that?
We're really lucky. We're really lucky. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. And if you want to give some flowers to the altar, and then we'll get prepared for our prashad. Jai Ma. Thank you online.
You got, I offered mine. You know, Arati ready. No.